Now it's the next speaker will be Arvo Viltorp. And Arvo is the chair professor of the Veterinary Bio and Population Medicine at the Estonian University of Life Sciences. And he's been working on African swine fever since it was introduced into the European Union in 2014 when it came to Estonia, and he is one of the key players in his country working with this disease. But Arvo is also in the expert group of the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, and he sits in the Animal Health and Animal Welfare panel. So he has, as Michelle was very well positioned to present the situation in Africa, Arvo is very well positioned to present you an updated version of what is happening currently in Europe and in the EU. So Arvo, if you can share your screen and put on your camera, then you're welcome. If you're still around.
Yes, I'm around.
Yes, that's good. Perfect.
Thank you for this introduction. And now I'm trying to find my screen. So, I have lost my screen.
Let me see if I can share your screen.
So,
No.
Do you see my screen now? No?
No, maybe I see your photo, but not your screen. I see your camera.
Share screen. I can't. For some reason, I don't see my screen here in this selection.
Yeah, no.
I can see you. This is colors.
So
now it's coming, yeah. Hi, Carlos.
Hi.
can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's here. Yeah.
Great.
So we will remove our cameras and we give you the floor or the screen.
Thanks. Thanks again for this introduction and also for the opportunity to talk today. And here is the outline of my speech. So I will go through the main, let's say, epidemiological events since spring 2018, when we had our last GARA meeting in Sardinia. So I will try to summarize the situation in Eastern Europe, and then I have, of course, more information about European Union situation, so I will touch that more thoroughly. And then we will shortly discuss also the drivers of the epidemic during the last 2 years and the transmission routes. And then we try to make some conclusions and talk about future perspectives as well. So let's start with the chronologically then with the Eastern Europe. And if we start with the Caucasus, I hope you can see my mouse also then pointing at Georgia and Armenia and Azerbaijan. So you see, of course, from the map what you might already have seen from OIE website, but I have introduced it here. So you can see, of course, that there are no reports of the African
your
swine.
slides are not moving.
Sorry?
Sorry, Jean-Baptiste speaking. Your slides are not moving. Probably you have to cancel the share and reshare again.
Okay, my slides are not moving. I see. Aha, it's paused for some reason. Stop share. Share screen. Close that. Okay. There is some problems with my. Can you see it now?
No,
No?
it was there a few minutes ago, but now it's gone again.
Okay. I wonder what happened.
Yeah,
Can you see?
it comes. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Sorry. Well, now do you see my map from OIE website, from WAHIS? So the Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. There are no reports in recent years from these countries. However, there are some circumstantial evidence that the disease might be present also in these countries, although there's no data from that. Particularly if you look at the neighboring areas here in Russia, where we have some cases in wild boar occurring. So yeah, until now we don't have any surveillance data from these countries, so we can't be sure what is the situation there. But in Russia, you can all see that there are some clusters of outbreaks in certain regions in Russia, and there are some regions that are not affected at present. This map is from the beginning of last year, but anyhow, we have, as I have heard from our colleagues in Russia, from Denis and from Denis Kolbasov and Andrei Gogin, Russia is now trying to apply the regionalization and regional approach to control the infection and the disease, and it might have some effect, as it is seen on that from that map here, that really only sporadic outbreaks or sporadic clusters of outbreaks are occurring during recent times. Now in Ukraine, unfortunately, the disease has spread all over the country, and we may expect that the virus is circulating in domestic cycle there. There are much more reports from the domestic herds compared to wild boar. However, you see that also that the wild boar cases are also distributed all over the country. There is not much information from the Belarus as well, but again, the situation around Belarus has given some indication that most likely the disease is also present in that country. Moldova, neighboring Ukraine and also Romania, has the outbreaks mostly in domestic pigs, and they have been located along the border with Romania during last years. And here we also can expect that domestic cycle is taking place. Well, now going to the situation in European Union, you can see here the map from Friedrich Loeffler Institute, who is so kind to provide us with the maps. So we don't need to create them all the time ourselves. And this is the situation in the end of 2018 here, when we had 10 EU countries affected, including Sardinia, which is not on that map, but officially in 2008, by the end of 2018, Sardinia as well was affected area. In 2018, 3 new countries were affected: Hungary, Bulgaria, and Belgium. And maybe an important keyword for that year was the human-mediated long-distance transmissions, because all these countries, all these 3 countries had experienced long-distance human-mediated transmissions of the virus. Although in Hungary, we also see probably some spillover from the neighboring country, Ukraine, on the border, but the 2 other clusters occurring in the central part and more west from the border are most likely due to the human-mediated spread. During 2018, the epidemic in Romania was gathering speed, and we had a lot of outbreaks in domestic pigs on the eastern part of the country, or southeastern part of the country at the time. In 2019, again, by the end of 2019, as it's shown on that map, 10 EU countries were affected. Now Czechia was declared officially free by 2019, but Slovakia was a new country who became affected. In 2019, also Serbia, which is neighboring country to EU countries, became infected So as it is on that map also, I included it here, although it's not yet a EU country. But also in this year, Serbia experienced long-distance human-mediated spread, and in Slovakia, although the source of the infection most likely was wild boar, although the infection was first detected in domestic pigs, but very soon it was found also in the area in wild boars. So the official hypothesis of the introduction of the virus was by a natural spread of the virus through the wild boar population. For that year, the keywords also are important, or keywords for that period is the extensive spread among domestic herds in Romania. So now it spread further in the south, and also the outbreaks occurred in the northern part of the country. But also a notable development in that year was a very rapid spread of the virus among wild boar in Bulgaria. You can see that it started in Bulgaria as a first outbreak in a domestic herd near Black Sea, but very soon, in 1 year, the virus was spread through the wild boar population of the whole country. If you compare to Baltic states and Poland, this had taken years to reach that extent of spread in wild boars of the virus. So in Bulgaria, the spread in wild boar has been really, really rapid, and we can suspect that there has been some human help in that spread. Also, by the end of 2019, we got a new cluster in Western Poland, which was also a remarkable event. It was very close to German border, and it worried the German colleagues about the spread of the African swine fever to this country. Fortunately, this cluster here started to spread more eastwards. Then it stopped the spread to the westwards and started to spread to the eastwards. And so far, Germany has been safe. And also from the positive side, Belgium and Estonia made a self-declaration of ASF freedom in domestic pigs to OIE, because Belgium never experienced any outbreak in domestic pigs, and Estonia had their last outbreaks in domestic pigs in 2017. So by the end of 2019, Estonia could declare themselves free of African swine fever in domestic pigs. So now the situation by today, we may say, by the end of August 2020, today we have had, this year we had 11 EU countries affected. So the new country was Greece. It was also a long-distance human-mediated spread, what has taken place. Luckily, this outbreak or introduction didn't spread further. It did not establish in Greece. So Greece by today is now again free, because this outbreak was successfully controlled. But we again see extensive spread among domestic herds in Romania, but also somewhat more cases or outbreaks detected in Poland. But now I want to go more deeply into details regionally. So let's first look at the Baltic states and Poland, what has happened here. So I already said that Estonia declared themselves free of domestic, free of ASF in domestic pigs, but also the situation in wild boar has been in very positive development. As the last virus positive or PCR positive wild boar was detected in Estonia in February 2019, and until now we have had only antibody positive findings in wild boar. So all these dots in Estonia are antibody positive wild boars. No virus positives found. In Latvia, the development is somewhat similar. They have virus positive findings only in the western part, in the southwestern corner of the country, now where they also have some outbreaks in domestic pigs still happening, but all the western part is more or less, we can say, free of the virus findings. And all these dots here on the eastern part, sorry, in the eastern part of the country are antibody positive wild boar, no virus findings anymore. In Lithuania, the situation has been developing more slowly, we may say. The spread of the virus through the wild boar population has taken much more time, much more slower, we may say. And now they have also most of the cases detected in wild boar either in the southwest or in the western part of the country, where they have also had sporadic outbreaks in domestic pigs. When we come to Poland, we have, or as already said, there are now new affected areas in the first, of course, in the north of Poland, which is bordering the Kaliningrad Oblast of Russia, and then in the west. As I said, this western cluster is now developing towards east and hasn't been gone further to the west. So in Poland, it's also important to mention that has been done a huge effort to reduce the density of wild boar, and as it has been now declared by Polish colleagues, the wild boar density in all hunting grounds at present is around 0.5 individuals per square kilometer. And in Poland as well, they have experienced that in this very first infected area on the eastern border of the country is now only with antibody positive findings in wild boar. So it also looks like that the disease has been fading out from that area which has been infected first. So now the Central Europe, we might say, is forming a separate epidemiological area. This is Hungary and Slovakia, neighboring countries. In Hungary, we have observed steady expansion of the affected area towards west. There was a new cluster appearing in the west of Budapest, which is also, of course, apparently a result of the human-mediated spread. Hungary is a unique country in that sense that there are no outbreaks among domestic pigs reported so far. The neighboring country, Slovakia, as already mentioned, detected its first outbreak in domestic pigs, but soon in August 2019, they also found virus in wild boar, and now it has been gradually expanding its affected area. And yeah, this is of course now another threat to the neighboring countries, we may say, but of course for Slovakia as well. Now the Balkan states, including Serbia here, not EU, but very close to us. About Romania, we already have said several times that the spread among domestic herds is dominating, and we can suspect that the domestic cycle is dominating here in the spread of the virus. But also wild boar is quite extensively affected and certainly plays a role in spreading the disease as well. Bulgaria has more successfully controlled the virus spread among domestic herds, although the outbreaks are occurring continuously, but not in that large numbers compared to Romania. And as already mentioned, in Greece, there was a single outbreak in February this year, and the country is officially free right now, having now, let's say, intensified surveillance zone along the border of the country with Bulgaria. Now, a few words about Serbia as well. As you see from that map here, the first outbreaks in Serbia were detected in domestic pigs, there was a cluster of outbreaks in the center of the Serbia in July 2019. And soon after, in September 2019, the second introduction apparently took place on the border with Romania. But these domestic herds were quite successfully controlled and eradicated, and the disease actually didn't spread further from these first two introductions. However, in January 2020, the virus spread now through the wild boar population from Bulgaria, spilling over to the wild boar population in Serbia, and now we see the expansion of the infected area of wild boar towards west, and now the situation will be probably more difficult to control, and also the outbreaks in domestic pigs are occurring again in this area where the virus is spreading in wild boar. So we may say that there have been 3 introductions to Serbia of the virus over 2 years. So a few words about Belgium. The outbreak in Belgium, we also can be hopeful that has ended. The virus was detected, or we may say the virus positive wild boar were detected in Belgium over the period September 2018 until September-October 2019. The last PCR positive finding was in spring, in March 2020, but these were positive remains of wild boar carcass. So we still can say that the last fresh, so to say, positive or virus positive wild boar was detected in September last year. So Belgium has conducted successful eradication campaign, applying fencing of the infected area in the south of Belgium, carcass removal, restrictions of human activities, and extensive depopulation campaign, wild boar depopulation campaign in the area, and that has resulted most likely with eradication. The official recognition of the freedom has not been reached yet, but it is most likely happening, hopefully, this year. So now this is a very quick overview of the main events, epidemiological events in European Union. And now a few words about drivers of the spread during the last couple of years. And if you look at the new countries that were, or regions that were affected during these, let's say now almost 3 years, we can see that either it is domestic pigs, and they were most often in domestic pigs in small holdings, which were affected first, or even if it was wild boar, like in Hungary, the long distance human spread has been predominating. So I think that could be one conclusion to make, that long distance human mediated spread has been the main route of introduction of the virus into new regions or countries in Europe during these last 2 or 3 years. The local spread has been probably, or most likely, very much driven by wild boar mediated spread, but that also has, the local spread also has got support from human mediated spread. We can be sure about that both in domestic pigs and in wild boar, the human activities also contribute to the local spread of the virus. And you can see from that illustration here that wild boar is interested in garbage if it's left on roadsides, and that can be a very easy way to infect the populations, wild boar populations. Over whatever distance. And of course, now when we have more and more infection around, and that makes more possible that also contaminated meat can be in circulation. if we talk about transmission routes to domestic herds, there's nothing much new to add. It's also still, we can see that indirect transmissions with fomites are most likely way of introducing the virus into the domestic pigs. So either humans, vehicles, or other animals, or feeding stuffs, or swill feeding, they are contributing to the most to the introduction of the virus into the herds. The animal movements are responsible for new outbreaks in very rare occasions. We have some examples where it has been shown that that animals from the infected herd were moved to another connected herd, or even more to more distant locations, but they are not so frequent compared to those situations where we can exclude the animal movement as a source of or reason for transmission of the virus. Blood-sucking insects are still under discussions due to the seasonality of outbreaks in domestic pigs. Here you see the seasonality in Baltic states, but the similar picture is also in Romania today, where we have the peak of outbreaks in summer months. So it still can't be ruled out that blood-sucking insects may play a role, although there are not any solid proof on that. So now we can conclude that the epidemic will perhaps slowly but steadily develop towards west. So we have steady spread in wild boar populations, and most likely occasional long distance translocations to either to domestic herds or to wild boar populations in new countries. So new countries to be affected in coming years are very likely. And we also can conclude that the present biosecurity measures have not been sufficient to avoid the introduction of the virus into the domestic herds, including the commercial herds. And here is the ADNS notification of ASF in domestic pigs 2020. Most of them are, these outbreaks are registered in smallholders, in small holdings, but there are a number of commercial herds, which can be called also high biosecurity commercial herds, that are affected. And we definitely need to address that question, why that happens. We have 5 years already experience with African swine fever, and we haven't learned much from that. We can say that we still get infections in the domestic herds. Here is the example from Estonia, where we also experienced the same phenomenon. We reduced the number of outbreaks over the years, but you see that the incidence rate didn't decrease remarkably. It stayed over 2 outbreaks per 100 herd years over all the periods of epidemic, what we experienced in domestic pigs over 3 years. So about control, focal introductions into wild boar populations can be eradicated using fencing as a tool to contain the affected area. Now we have 2 very good examples, Czechia and Belgium, and that probably inspires other countries to use similar measures to control or to eradicate the disease if focal introductions will occur. Fences have been now also introduced as a tool to protect the country borders. And that has been used in France, in Luxembourg, Germany, in Denmark. And that is probably also a tendency that we are going to see in other countries in danger. Although a couple of years ago, it was considered unfeasible and not so useful, but now we can see that really fences can help. It's also, of course, very resource demanding, both financial and human resource demanding measure, but if the resources are available, they are probably useful tools to control and also in focal introduction, in case of focal introduction, to eradicate the disease. Of course, in combination with all other tools available. And finally, it is time to think about exit strategy as well. We have some positive developments also, along with the expansion of the infected area. We have now Belgium, Estonia, Italy. I haven't told much about Sardinia or Italy or Sardinia situation in Sardinia, but there is also very favorable epidemiological situation in Sardinia. The last cases in domestic pigs were years ago, and in Prado pigs in 2018. Also in Italy right now, or in Sardinia, only antibody positive cases in wild boar have been detected, and no virus positive. So Belgium, Estonia, Italy, or Sardinia are looking forward for an exit strategy. The challenge for us is that right now that the legislation doesn't make difference between the antibody positive and virus positive animals, and the antibody positive animals may be detected for years, as we see already both in Sardinia and in Estonia. And that is a major challenge to declare the country free of the infection. And the other question is how to collect a representative sample from the wild boar population after it has been depleted by the epidemic. Well, the good news in that aspect is that the population is recovering quite fast. So maybe that will be the solution, that we will allow the population to recover a little bit, and we can be also, then it will be more easy to collect also the carcasses and also the samples from the hunted animals to prove the freedom from the disease. And it is always good to finish your talk with a good story, and some of you have seen that story already in my presentation, but this is one example how the virus can be brought from forest into the farm. This is not directly linked to the outbreak in Estonia, but that story caught my attention in the country newspaper, national country newspaper in Estonia, and it's fun to read. She found a small piece of bone on the ground as she walked in his farmyard, thinking over the subject of her final work at craftsman school. It was later revealed that it was a wild boar's toe bone that the dogs had brought from somewhere. It was so beautiful, clean and white faded, with little dog tooth notches. She recalls it was a revelation, and that is, of course, at least revelation for me, that really these kind of things happen, and we have such indirect links to the wild boar that can easily bring the infection to the domestic pigs. And thank you. And here is the piece of art inspired by the African swine fever from Estonia as well.
Thank you very much for a very nice presentation, Arvo, and for these nice final slides. So we have 15 minutes or something for questions, and I have two so far. One from Thomas Dulu, and he asked about the ASF control measures rely on strict sanitary measures. In Europe, apart from the long-distance human-mediated spread, what weaknesses in veterinary and agricultural sectors have contributed in renewed proliferation of ASF outbreaks?
Well, yeah, it's very difficult to talk about all countries in EU or in Europe in general, because the countries, although we are as one European Union, but the countries are very different. But I think the main difficulty to control the disease in domestic pigs we face in the countries where we have a very large smallholder sector, like Romania or Bulgaria or even Poland. And in these countries, this control in domestic pigs has appeared to be extremely difficult. So it's very, very likely to get the so-called domestic cycle of the circulation of the virus, and from that cycle to eradicate the virus from that cycle has appeared to be very difficult.
Thank you. And then we have from Tom Deinhoff about the antibody positive pigs. So should they be considered to be possible virus carriers, bringing piglets that are virus bombs?
Yeah, that has been a long discussion about virus carriers of African swine fever virus, and we have investigated that question in many ways, including looking into the literature. Carl has leading a team conducting a very thorough literature review on that topic, and actually we haven't found any evidence that actually long-term virus carrying is taking place in case of African swine fever, and the transmission to the piglets is also almost impossible. There is only, I think we have found only one report where the virus has been transmitted to the piglets, and then the piglets died. Actually, they didn't become carriers. The fetal transmission has been proven only in one experiment, and these piglets are not able to survive. So I don't think that antibody carriers could be the virus bombs, actually. And we don't have any evidence that the seropositive animals are spreading the disease or virus in the areas where we have them. The prevalence of antibody carriers is reducing gradually in all these areas where we don't see virus positive animals anymore.
And you mainly see them in adult animals rather than
we see them almost only in adult animals.
Thanks. So from Boban Duric, excellent presentation. In this time here in Serbia, we are making a strong effort to stop the spread of ASF. So that's good news. So we wish you good luck in Serbia. From Marco Denardi, can you elaborate on the situation of Georgia and Armenia? Do you think ASF might be circulating despite no reports available? On what basis? Thanks from Marco.
Well, this is my personal opinion, and I also have got some opinions from the neighboring countries that they have experienced some cases occurring right on the border or near to the border of let's say, Caucasian countries. And the other thing is that we don't get much information from these countries regarding the surveillance, what kind of surveillance has been conducted. So there is no proof of freedom as well from these countries. So that makes me think that there's a high possibility that the virus is still present in these countries.
Good. Any more questions? Otherwise, I will ask you, because I asked Dirk this morning about the situation in Asia, on how the prediction for the future. What do you see? Do you see a long-term presence of ASF in many countries in Europe, or do you think that Estonia and Belgium and Czechia are only outliers that will manage to control the situation?
In long term, I'm convinced that we managed to solve it, but not in the near future. I still would dare to predict that it will spread further, and in these countries where we have this kind of widespread in wild boar, unless we really take really drastic measures to control or to depopulate the wild boar population, we are not able to stop the spread of the virus through the wild boar populations. And then the domestic herds will be ultimately in danger as well. And we will see outbreaks there.
Thanks. Then from My Salman from Sweden, from our farmer association, Poland is reducing their wild boar population, but the disease is still spreading. Can you say something about this?
Well, yes, I can say that 0.5 wild boar per square kilometers might not be enough low density to stop the spreading. But in Estonia, we experienced that where we have 0.1 wild boar, we had 0.1 wild boar per square kilometer in 2019. And when we had a very likely new introduction of the virus in that population, it didn't spread. It only spread in the area of with radius of 5 square kilometers, and no further spread was observed. So it very quickly died out in that situation. So we really need a very, very low density of wild boar to stop really the spread. So this 0.5 might not be enough.
Thanks. And then we have from Carlos Martins in Portugal. Thank you, Arvo. Question: when you mention high numbers of antibody-positive wild boar, in which conditions are samples collected, alive or dead animals?
They are alive animals, because where the carcasses are seldom in that condition that you can test for antibodies, but sometimes they are tested as well. But most often they are live animals, hunted animals.
Yeah, and then there is a follow-up from Carlos on the same issue. If you're trying to isolate any virus from these antibody-positive hunted wild boar.
Yeah, they are always tested both for virus and for antibodies, and we are also collecting now, trying to collect we have collected also tissue samples from these hunted animals, and also these tissue samples have been all virus negative. So not only blood samples were tested for virus, also tissue samples have been tested negative.
So we'll see, maybe this is the last one from Alex Barlow. How did African swine fever get into Greece? Was the route determined?
No, it was a mystery case. It was quite far away from the border, I think 300 kilometers from the closest case, or in Bulgaria. It was a small farm, mixed farm with outdoor keeping of pigs. And actually the authorities couldn't establish the true, plausible, even a plausible connection to the outbreaks in Bulgaria. So it was really mystery outbreak, but yeah, we don't know.
So if there are no more questions, then the time is almost out. Then we say thank you very much, Arvo, for excellent presentation, and to the participants for attending and for engaging in the discussions and questions. And again to Armanda and her team in Pretoria. And you're all